Malcolm IV, nicknamed Virgo, the Maiden, King of Scots, was the eldest son of Henry, Earl of Huntingdon and Northumbria and Ada de Warenne. The original Malcolm Canmore, a name now associated with his great-grandfather Malcolm III, he succeeded his grandfather David I, and shared David's Anglo-Norman tastes. Called Malcolm the Maiden by later chroniclers, a name which may incorrectly suggest weakness or effeminacy to modern readers, he was noted for his religious zeal and interest in knighthood and warfare. For much of his reign he was in poor health and died unmarried at the age of 24. Accession. Earl Henry, son and heir of King David I of Scotland, had kept poor health throughout the 1140s. He died suddenly on June 12, 1152. His death occurred in either Newcastle or Roxburgh, both located in those areas of Northumbria which he and his father had attached to the Scots crown in the period of English weakness after the death of Henry of England. Unlike in the case of the English king, who had been left without male heirs after the death of his only son and the wreck of the White Ship, the King of Scots, David I, did not lack for immediate heirs upon the death of Earl Henry. This was because Earl Henry had left behind 3 sons to carry forward the lineage of his father. Malcolm, the eldest of Earl Henry's sons, was only 11 years old. He was however sent by his grandfather on a circuit of the kingdom, accompanied by Don Cod, Mayor of Fife, and a large army. Don Cod had been styled rector, perhaps indicating that he was to hold the regency for Malcolm on David's death. These preparations were timely, because King David survived his son less than 1 year, dying on May 24, 1153 at Carlisle. Malcolm was inaugurated as king on May 27, 1153 at Scone at age 12. Don Cod, who duly became regent for the young Malcolm, ensured that the inauguration took place before the old king was even buried. This might appear unseemly, but there was good reason for the haste. Malcolm was not without rivals for the kingship. Don Cod himself died a year later, in 1154. Rivals and neighbours, the Orkneyinga saga claims William the Noble, son of William Fitz-Duncan, was the man whom every Scotsman wanted for his king. As William Fitz-Duncan married Alice de Rumilly c. 1137, young William could only have been a youth, perhaps a child, by 1153. There is no evidence to suggest that William ever made any claims to the throne, and he died young, in the early 1160s, leaving his sizable estates to his 3 sisters. Of William Fitz-Duncan's other sons, Bishop women had already been blinded, emasculated and imprisoned at Beland Abbey before King David's death, but Donald Mac Willime, first of the Mike Willime, had considerable support in the former Mormaerdom of Murray. Another contender, imprisoned at Roxburgh since about 1130, was Mar el Callum Mac Alexander, an illegitimate son of Alexander I. Mar el Callum's sons were free men in 1153. They could be expected to contest the succession, and did so. As a new and young king, Malcolm also faced threats to his rule from his neighbours. Foremost among them was Earl, King of Argyll, Fergus, Lord of Galloway, and Henry II, King of England. Only Rognvald Carly Coulson, Earl of Orkney, was otherwise occupied, and his death in 1158 brought the young and ambitious Harold Madadson to power in Orkney, who proved yet another threat to the young Malcolm. The first open opposition to Malcolm came in November 1153, from family rivals, the sons of Mar el Callum Mac Alexander. They mounted their challenge with the aid of a neighbour, Earl of Argyll. This threat soon dissipated, because Earl was beset with more pressing concerns. His war with Godred Olafson of Man lasted until 1156 and a possible conflict with Gilchrist St. Mayor of Menteith, over Cole, loomed large. Support for the sons of Mar el Callum Mac Alexander may also have come from areas closer to the core of the kingdom. 2 conspirators are named by chroniclers, one of whom died in trial by combat in February 1154. In 1157, it is reported, King Malcolm was reconciled with Mar el Callum Macith, who was appointed to the Mormaerdom of Ross, which had probably been held by his father. Malcolm IV and Henry II. Malcolm was not only King of Scots, but also inherited the earldom of Northumbria, which his father and grandfather had gained during the wars between Stephen and Empress Matilda. Malcolm granted Northumbria to his brother William, keeping Cumbria for himself. Cumbria was, like the earldoms of Northumbria and Huntingdon, and later Chester, a fief of the English crown. While Malcolm delayed doing homage to Henry II of England for his possessions in Henry's kingdom, he did so in 1157 at Peveril Castle in Derbyshire and later at Chester. Here Henry refused to allow Malcolm to keep Cumbria, or William to keep Northumbria, but instead granted the earldom of Huntingdon to Malcolm, for which Malcolm did homage. After a second meeting between Malcolm and Henry, at Carlisle in 1158, they returned without having become good friends, and so that the King of Scots was not yet knighted. In 1159 Malcolm accompanied Henry to France, serving at the siege of Toulouse where he was, at last, knighted. Whether this was the act of a King of Scots or of an Earl of Huntingdon we are not told. It was certainly the act of a man desperate for knightly arms, but that did not make it any more acceptable in Scotland. Malcolm returned from Toulouse in 1160. At Perth, Roger of Hoveden reports, he faced a rebellion by 6 earls, led by Furchar, Mormaer of Strathearn, who besieged the king. Given that Earl Furchar heads the list of those named, it is presumed that Doncodge II, Mormaer of Fife, was not among the rebels. John of Fordun's version in the Gesta Annalia appears to suggest a peaceful settlement of the affair, and both Fordun and Hoveden follow the report of the revolt and its ending by stating that the king led an expedition into Galloway where he eventually defeated Fergus, Lord of Galloway, and took his son Eughtred as a hostage while Fergus became a monk at Holyrood, dying there in 1161. While it was assumed that the earls included Fergus among their number, and that the expedition to Galloway was related to the revolt, it is now thought that the earls sought to have Malcolm attack Galloway, perhaps as a result of raids by Fergus. Sometime before July 1163, when he did homage to Henry II, Malcolm was taken seriously ill at Doncaster. Scottish sources report that a revolt in Murray brought Malcolm north, and it is said that he removed the men of Murray from the land of their birth, as of old Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had dealt with the Jews, and scattered them throughout the other districts of Scotland, both beyond the month and the side thereof, so that not even one native of that land abode there. Having made peace with Henry, replaced Fergus of Galloway with his sons, and resettled Murray, only one of Malcolm's foes remained, Somerled, by 1160 king of the Isles as well as of Argyll. In 1164, Somerled led a large army of Islesmen and Irishmen to attack Glasgow and Renfrew, where Walter Fitzalan had newly completed a castle. Somerled and his son Gillibrigt were killed in battle with the levies of the area, led by the Bishop of Glasgow, probably Herbert of Selkirk at that time. The chronicles of the day attributed the victory to the intercession of Saint Kentigern. Death and posterity. Malcolm died on December 9, 1165 at Jedburgh, aged 24. His premature death may have been hastened by Paget's disease. While his contemporaries were in no doubt that Malcolm had some of the qualities of a great king, later writers were less convinced. The compiler of the Annals of Ulster, writing soon after 1165, praises Malcolm. Mar el Caluim sin Mar cubed son of Henry, High King of Scotland, the best Christian that was of the Goidhil, who dwell by the sea on the east for alms deeds, hospitality and piety, died. Likewise, William of Newburgh praises Malcolm, the most Christian king of the Scots, highly in his Historia Rerum Anglicarum. Nonetheless, Malcolm was not well regarded in all quarters. The Gesta Annalia remarks, Malcolm quite neglected the care, as well as governance, of his kingdom. Wherefore he was so hated by all the common people that William, the elder of his brothers, who had always been on bad terms with the English, and their lasting foe, forasmuch as they had taken away his patrimony, the earldom of Northumbria, to wit, was by them appointed warden of the whole kingdom, against the king's will. According to legend, he had a daughter who was betrothed to Henry, Prince of Capua, on the latter's deathbed, but this is false as Malcolm had no heirs. His mother formulated a plan for a marriage to Constance, daughter of Conan III, Duke of Brittany, but Malcolm died before the wedding could be celebrated. It is difficult, given the paucity of sources, to date many of the reforms of the Scoto-Norman era, but it appears that Malcolm continued the reforms begun by his grandfather and granduncles. The sheriffdoms of Crail, Dunfermline, Edinburgh, Forfar, Lanark and Linlithgow appear to date from Malcolm's reign, and the office of Justiciar of Lothian may also date from this period. Malcolm founded a Cistercian monastery at Cooper Angus, and the royal taste for continental religious foundations extended to the magnates, as in Galloway, where the Premonstratensians were established at Salsat by 1161. Fictional portrayals. Malcolm IV has been depicted in historical novels. They include Lord of the Isles by Nigel Trunter. The main character of the novel is Somerled, Lord of the Isles. The plot follows his military career, rise to power, swearing of fealty to David I of Scotland, and support of a revolt against Malcolm IV. It concludes with the murder of Somerled. Tapestry of the Boar by Nigel Trunter. The main character is Hewda Swinton, a huntsman at the court of Malcolm IV. He is at first employed to slay wild boars which threaten humans, sheep and cattle of the Scottish countryside. He then serves as a scout to the army of the king during the conflict with Fergus of Galloway. Malcolm IV eventually tasks Hugh with establishing Souter Isle, the first real hospital for the sick and poor in Scotland. Ancestry. Notes. References. External links. Celt, Corpus of Electronic Text at University College Cork includes the Annals of Ulster, Tigernach and Innisfallen, the Liber Brynach and the Chronicon Scotorum among others. Most are translated or translations are in progress. Orkneyinga Saga at Northveg.